What is up, mental patients? My name is Tormental, and you know, if there's one thing that there's just not enough of on the internet, it's Overwatch OCs. Overwatch original characters. You can't get enough of them. The more you see, the more you want. And I am here today to give you a video with a certain number of my own Overwatch OCs. Some of them never before seen, some of them, that you will not see anywhere else other than in this video. If you like them, please let me know. Write a comment below, leave a like on the video, don't forget to subscribe. Buy my t-shirts, tell me how much you love me, tell me I saved your life, tell me that my videos are the best and funniest things you've ever seen. Basically just inflate my ego to the size of that Farah that just went by. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to just show you guys some of my concepts, some of my ideas, because I really like the idea of adding characters to Overwatch that have new and outlandish abilities. I like what we've gotten so far to a certain extent. I like Sombra's hack ability. I like Yoanna as a character in total. I like Moira as... I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. I like Moira as a character in total. Some of the characters, though, I feel like have been a little lackluster. Some of them kind of reuse abilities that are already available to other heroes. I like things that, sort of push the limits, kind of do things that are a little bit crazy, do things a little bit unexpected that might change the game. So yeah, in honor of the fact that there just aren't enough Overwatch OCs on the internet, here are probably about 12 of mine. Aura is an Omnic made for very specific purposes. Aura is an advertising Omnic. In a future where Omnics are commonplace, they're everywhere, they're in all jobs, in all positions, I figured it might be fun to design a character that maybe is a little bit funny, a little bit interesting to look at, something with a lot of potential for different cosmetic skins, like a blue screen of death, different operating systems, maybe a test pattern face, different things like that. Just to sort of make sort of a fun, funny, interesting character. Aura, her main fire, is electrostatic orbs. Now, this would be sort of similar to Symmetra's alt fire, the orb that she fires out, except not. I would like the orbs to actually penetrate through enemies like Symmetra's orbs used to do before they sort of nerfed that a bit. They would also be connected by electrostatic tethers. What does this mean? This means that while Aura is sending out the orbs, each orb that she fires is connected to the last one with like an electrostatic bolt, like a tether. If you picture Winston's electrical gun, it would sort of be like a bolt of electricity between the two orbs. This means that she can fire them in different directions, and between the two orbs will be a line, basically like a electrostatic line of damage. So you can, fire one orb to the left, one orb to the right, and have, the line between them go through the enemy team. For reduced damage, but still, for damage. Her alt fire would be a circle of orbs, again, all connected by a tether, so you'd be basically firing out like a big spreading circle of damage, with like an orb at each point of the circle, or each side of the circle. Neither of those make sense because circles don't have points or sides, but you get the idea. And a circle made of electrostatic damage. So basically, if you know Binding of Isaac, there's the power-up in that gives you tears that are connected by an electrostatic tether. That would be the best way to give you like a visual of how that would work. Her E ability causes enemies to slowly float away. Now, what does this mean? This means that if Aura is being beset by multiple enemies, if, the enemy team is rushing in, they're diving, they're all around Aura, and they're within, like, a certain small radius of her character, pressing E causes, like, a static shock effect that causes the enemies near her to begin sort of acting like they're in low gravity, begin uncontrollably floating away. It sort of is a way to deter people from getting too close to you, a way to back them off with some knockback, but it would be slower and more like just a annoyance to the enemy. So it's not like, they get knocked into a wall, they get thrown off the map, different things like that. They just start sort of like slowly floating away. Sort of like they've drunk a fizzy lifting drink from Willy Wonka. But yeah, it would be very, short in effect. It wouldn't be like a lasting status. It basically is a way to clear some space and get people away from you so you can escape or whatever. Her shift ability would be to release a spy drone. Now, how this would work is similar to how when Junkrat releases his Riptire. You would release a spy drone, and you'd be able to control it and go around the map looking for where the enemy is. It's sort of like just a way to do reconnaissance. Nothing that special. The drone, of course, could be destroyed by the enemy. Things like that. It's a pretty basic ability. It's just a way to tell your team, where the enemy is coming from, where they're hiding out, things like that. Aura's ultimate is in energy form. She converts her entire being to energy. In this state, she can move faster, and simply touching enemies does damage to them. So what you would picture in your mind is Aura becoming a being of almost light, becoming a being of energy, moving very fast, and basically running through the enemy, like physically through their bodies to cause them damage. It's sort of like Genji's dash attack, but you'd be able to, control yourself and go around basically chasing down enemies and playing like a deadly game of freeze tag, if you know what I mean. So yeah, the more you touch enemies, the more damage they take. That would be Aura, pretty much in a nutshell. The thing with her ult is, I think it would be kind of powerful if the enemy is grouped up, because you could just run at them in energy form, go around touching them all, zapping them, giving them a little, damage here and there. But the downside, of course, is that when you come out of your ultimate, you're going to be standing in the middle of any enemies that are left, so you got to kind of use it carefully. Now, I was thinking that another counter to this might be maybe you can damage Aura in her energy form if you use melee attacks. Because, she'd be energy. Projectiles and bullets and things like that would pass through her. She sort of is, like, invulnerable to certain attacks. But I was thinking maybe melee attacks, like, from Reinhardt's hammer, from Brigitte's flail, and even from just using, each hero's melee ability, with a little punch or kick or something, would probably do damage. But, so it's just, you get some protection, but not entirely, you're not entirely in God mode where you can't be damaged. So yeah, that's Aura, the advertising Omnic. Up next we have BOONE, the Survivalist. Now, BOONE is a bit of an interesting character. He's comes with one really, really special ability, and then the rest of it, is kind of like built around that. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. BOONE comes with a basic pistol, sort of like Diva's pistol when she's out of her mech, maybe a little bit less, quick, whatever. It sort of is like a very lackluster weapon. Now, why does BOONE come with a very lackluster pistol as his main fire? Well, that's because when he presses E, he can actually pick up and use the weapon of a dead enemy. So yeah, BOONE is based sort of around the idea of the old first-person shooters, Doom, Quake, different things like that, where you killed an enemy, you found a rotating gun hovering, like a rocket launcher or a shotgun, and you picked it up, when you ran over it or whatever. He's sort of based on that old style of FPS gaming. So what would happen is, like, let's say there's an enemy Winston, your team kills the Winston, and for a short period of time, where Winston died, you see his electrical cannon just sort of hovering there, ready to be picked up. So as BOONE, you'd be able to go, press E on that cannon, pick it up, and use Winston's electrical cannon. If somebody, if an enemy Widow dies, Widowmaker, you'd be able to go to where she died, pick up her sniper rifle. So basically, you're able to counter enemies on that have died using their own weapons. Like, let's say you want to use Widow's sniper to take out the enemy Widow. Let's say you want to use Reinhardt's hammer to wail away on the enemy Reinhardt while the healers pocket you or something. It basically is a very versatile kind of like game-changing character. When you see that the enemy team has a BOONE on their team, you don't know what exactly he's going to be shooting at you. He may be shooting at you with your Junkrat's grenades. he may be shooting at you with your Hanzo's bow. So I think that's kind of a cool idea. As I said, I like things that sort of shake up the game, kind of risky ideas. I think this is a very risky idea. But yeah, so in order to get those weapons, though, Boone has to get close enough to where the enemy died to get those weapons and pick them up. So one of the things he would also be able to do is his shift ability, which is to place a claymore. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what a claymore is, I'm sure there's some people out there who don't. It basically is an explosive device you can place on the ground, and if somebody walks in front of it, it trips the explosive device, and it has sort of like an outward blast, that usually kills an enemy in real life. In Overwatch, it might just cause a lot of damage. So it sort of is like Junkrat's mine, except it's motion activated, and fires in the direction of the front of the claymore. So the enemy has to walk in front of it. So if let's say Boone picks up the sniper rifle, he may go to a sniping location and put a couple claymores on the staircase up to where he's going, so that when an enemy comes to try to flank him, boom, the claymores explode because they detected, that the enemy had come close. But yeah, his ultimate is a chainsaw rush. Again, he's based on the old FPS games, in Doom and Doom 2 and so on. You get the chainsaw as like a fan favorite weapon. So yeah, he basically pulls out a chainsaw out of his survivalist backpack, I guess, revs it up, and you can basically speed around, slashing back and forth with your chainsaw, sort of like if you were in a Winston ult, but instead of hitting people and knocking them back, you're going through, slashing them with a chainsaw. So you'd be, zipping around, swinging back and forth, dealing damage to people. Now, Boone's passive is based more on the sort of like Left 4 Dead type games, and things like that. It's been in other games as well, like the Battle Royale games, have this type of thing, but his passive is that he goes down on his death. Like when he's killed, he goes down, but he stays alive for 3 seconds. So in other words, he falls down on his back, but he still is alive for 3 seconds, able to shoot his main pistol, his normal main fire. You lose any weapons that you've picked up, that type of thing. But you'd be able to use your main pistol. This is, again, similar to like PUBG, Fortnite, and Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, in that when he dies, there still is like a period of time where he's crawling around before he actually physically finally dies. Now, if Boone manages to get a kill while he is down, he will automatically revive himself back up. You're not going to be at full health. Maybe it would be like a third of his health or something. But, because you don't want to have him just making a kill and then standing back up at full health. I think that would be kind of OP. So yeah, his passive is that when he is killed, he has a remaining 3 seconds to try to score a kill to get back up. Yeah. I mean, if you've played Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2, if you've played any Battle Royale game, you probably are familiar with this mechanic already, and I should just shut up. But yeah, that's Boone, the survivalist. I think he's got a really interesting kit that would change a lot of things up. Next we have Hazard. This is the first healer on our list so far. Hazard, the Contaminator. Basically, she's like a hazmat type character. There actually is a hazmat suit wearing character in the Overwatch promotional material. I don't know what they're going to do with that character. They may have plans for it, but this is sort of like my take on what that character could be. Hazard's main fire is basically a goop nozzle, like a hose that sprays goop, similar to how Mei sprays ice, but not really. The goop causes enemies to slide, which makes it a little harder to control their character. So if you concentrate on an enemy and you're just firing goop at them, you just cover them with damaging goop, like as I said, like Mei spraying somebody with cold. The enemy starts sliding around, with their motion controls. Like if they move forward, they'll slip a little bit. Basically, you're gooping up enemies and making them all goopy, so they're kind of sliding around. The alt fire, like your right click, would goop blast a surface, healing allies who touch it. So you're creating sort of like when Torbjorn puts out his Molten Core ability, his new one, where he creates like little pools of lava on the floor. Her right click would create little pools of healing goop on the floor. This is sort of like Soldier 76 when he puts down his healing field, where it's like a little circle of healing. So yeah, you'd be able to like fire your healing ability over, like lob it over to where somebody is. Hopefully it lands at their feet, or they can move into it and stand over it, and they get healed just by standing in the healing goo. Yeah. The E ability on Hazard is like a jetpack sort of boost. Basically, she goes up in the air with like like an explosion of goop. It leaves a splatter on the ground, which would be, of course, the healing splatter. It sort of is a way to help you get out of a situation and also take care of any allies that are like maybe being left behind. Like, let's say you're standing there with like the Bastion. You're standing next to the Bastion on your own team, and the enemy comes rushing in, and they're about to steamroll in. You'd be able to do like a jetpack boost, which would get you out of harm's way, but you'd also leave behind like a pool of splatter that will heal the Bastion while he's being attacked and leaving as well. So it's sort of like a nice escape route type thing. As you can see, Hazard is sort of based around like being an actual counter to diving, sort of. Shift. If you press Shift while you're using Hazard, you'd be able to slide on a slime trail. So basically, it's like if you've seen Iceman in the X-Men comics, where he creates like a ice bridge or an ice slide that he slides around on to get everywhere. Basically, what you would do with Shift is you would start spraying the ground and move faster on a trail. So yeah, and that would also create like a little healing strip of goop, in like the line you've gone. Again, it's all about mobility, escaping people who are trying to dive in on you, different things like that. The ultimate on Hazard is pretty straightforward. Her ultimate is that she herself becomes radioactive. She becomes toxic, because Overwatch, it needs a toxic hero. It's got a lot of toxic players. It's about time it had a toxic hero. She becomes radioactive and causes harm to enemies who stand too close. So she would just cause like a radius of damage around herself. Now with this, you could again try to escape a situation and they wouldn't be able to follow you because they'd be getting damaged. Or you could actually sacrifice yourself and just go running toward the enemy, damaging them with your radius of radioactivity. But yeah, that's Hazard. She's actually a pretty simple one. I think that she's really cool. It's sort of like as a new take on a healer. You essentially are creating your own little areas, where there are pools of healing, and players can sort of stand in them or near them, to try to keep safe. Here we have Nadia, the roboticist. Nadia is a super genius. Her main fire is a blowtorch, essentially what you see on her wrist there, powered by a little battery cell. It would be not like a flamethrower. Don't, picture that. It would be like, as I say, a blowtorch, like a concentrated beam of heat. Her E ability is the ability to attach a mini drone to an ally. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, Nadia would release like a spherical drone robot that would hover over the shoulder of whatever ally she has given it to, whatever teammate she's selected and pressed E on. Now that drone will automatically fire, sort of like Torbjorn's turret, at any enemies who are near the ally you've given it to. Now it could be, of course, depowered a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly as powerful as Torbjorn's turret, but that's just to give you sort of an idea of how it operates. In other words, if you give the mini drone to Reinhardt, and your Reinhardt is up at the front of the group and he's got his shield up, so he can't really do any attacking, he's got his shield up, the little drone over his shoulder will be, firing at people for him. So you're sort of giving people like an assistant. You're giving them a little boost, a little friend to help them along. I think that's a pretty cool idea. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Her shift is the ability to deploy training drones. Now, if you've tried the training option on Overwatch, you know that there are red and blue drones, little robots that fire at each other and, wave hello when you say hello to them, different things like that. Basically, what this would do is reuse those assets. It's taking the training bots that already exist in game and giving them sort of a new purpose. So with shift, you would deploy a training drone that would sort of, pace back and forth, and if any enemies come near, it would turn and fire at them. Again, similar to Torbjorn's turret, but this, moves back and forth. It paces. You could place it in a doorway, and it'll sort of walk back and forth in that doorway, and if it sees somebody going by the doorway, it'll stop and, shoot at them. Again, if you've seen the drones in training, they're not really as powerful as, Torbjorn's turret, so on and so forth. I would think maybe you could probably have like 2 drones out at a time, and basically, would be a very good sort of defense mechanism to just sort of place a drone here and place a drone there, and, have them sort of patrol the area. Nadia's ultimate, I think, is pretty interesting as well. She deploys a big ol' Tesla coil, like a big ol' thing, planted right in the middle of the area where she places it. And that Tesla coil will equally heal allies as it damages enemies. So if your team is standing around the Tesla coil, and an enemy comes up to it, the Tesla coil will do damage to the enemy, and at the same time, it'll heal your teammates for the same amount as it's doing damage to the enemy. Does that make sense? So let's say you have 2 of your teammates near the Tesla coil. There are 2 of your teammates standing there. 1 enemy comes up. If the Tesla coil damages the enemy for 50 HP, it gives 25 HP to each of the 2 players standing near the Tesla coil. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that really, gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. Essentially, all the damage the Tesla coil does to enemies is then divided up to your teammates if they're standing close enough, to the Tesla coil. There probably is a better name for it than Tesla coil, since that's not really what it actually literally is, but we can always come to that later if this ever needs to be expanded for any reason, which it won't. Nadia's passive ability is that if she's reloading the blowtorch, if it's been used to 0, like if she's reloading an empty blowtorch, not reloading it unnecessarily, but reloading it when it's literally empty, the blowtorch ejects a battery that has been so overheated from use that it explodes. So the passive is that when she reloads an empty weapon, her blowtorch, a battery is thrown out of it that explodes and hurts enemies. So it would be like for every reload of an empty blowtorch, you send out like a Junkrat grenade, sort of. It's sort of like it's just a little random fun thing I thought might be funny. Because, exploding lithium batteries. So yeah, that's Nadia. Again, I think pretty simple to describe, and yet something that would very much change, the gameplay and, add a lot of different facets to it. This brings us to Error, the ghost in the machine. Error is basically a character who is sort of like an Omnic made of light technology. You've got Omnics in Overwatch, you've got robotic characters, and you've got the ability for objects and technology to be made out of light, like with the Symmetra character and what she does. So this is a combination of the 2 technologies. This is a light-based Omnic character. You could think of her sort of like a hologram, but not immaterial. She can be damaged. She has physical properties. But yeah, sort of like a physical hologram. I don't know. But yeah, Error's main fire would be her energy gauntlets. It would basically be a simple left and right fire thing, sort of like Reaper when he fires his left gun, then his right gun, then his left gun, then his right gun. But it would be energy projectiles sort of similar, once again, sort of similar to D.Va's hand pistol, but you'd be going like left, right, left, right, left, right, firing like that. Her alt fire is a short-range energy burst. Essentially, this is just her, almost like Wonder Woman, crossing her gauntlets, crossing her energy gauntlets, and releasing them for like a big pa-pow, like a short-range blast of energy that would do a lot of damage, but, only to enemies that are stupid enough to be very close to you. Her E ability would be randomizing an enemy's motion. What does that mean, you say? That sounds incredibly insane. Hey, we got hacking, we've got stunning, we've got knockback, we've got people putting enemies to sleep in the game already. Why not randomizing their motion controls? So yeah, if Error gets close enough to an enemy, she's basically built, for like messing with people, like, as I said, like a glitch, like an error, like a ghost in the machine. If she gets close enough to an enemy, she can press E on them, and it'll randomize the enemy's motion controls. So pressing W may move you backward. Pressing A may move you forward. Pressing S may move you to the right. Different things like that. So it would randomize the controls. Players who are hit with this would take a moment. They would need a moment to kind of, figure out which way they're supposed to be walking. Good way to make people walk off edges of things and drop off the map. But yeah, Error's shift is a speed burst. This is part of her thing. She's made sort of for flanking, for getting to places she shouldn't be, getting past enemies. Her shift is a speed burst, but it creates two clones that split off from her and sprint off in random directions. So what it would do is essentially create two more of you. So there's like 3 of your character, and the other 2 fake copies would go off in random directions while you proceed to where you want to go. So you get a speed burst, and you get 2 decoys to distract the enemy. They would be basically AI controlled. The 2 clones of yourself, the 2 copies, the decoys, would go, sort of like an AI. They would like run for cover. They would run, in different directions. But they wouldn't do anything like attack. They're not made to harm the enemy. They're just there to, for a few moments, confuse the enemy. They don't know which one of the 3 is the real you, unless they get lucky and happen to, shoot the real one, that type of thing. Her ultimate, I think, is pretty cool. I think this is pretty random, pretty insane, pretty funny. Her ultimate is that she can create attacking AI clones of herself and nearby teammates. So let's say you, your Reinhardt, and your Zarya, the 3 of you are in the objective and you're about to lose the fight. You'd be able to hit your ultimate, and it would create an AI version of you, an AI version of that Reinhardt that's near you, and an AI version of the Zarya that's near you. And it would effectively double the amount of team, on the point. Now, the AI clones, of course, would have reduced health. They're not there. They fade away after a short amount of time. But yeah, it basically would be creating your own AI teammates out of copies of, whatever teammates are near you at the time. Obviously, the most OP way to use this, the best way to use this, would be for your entire team to group up, and then you hit your ult, and you've got 12 people on your team because you've got copies of all 6 of you going in to try to get the point. Now, the thing is, the AI versions of your teammates aren't going to all run with you and stay grouped. They're going to act like AI, so they're not going to, go in and bulldoze the enemy with you. They're probably just going to fire, at people who are dumb enough to be nearby when you do that. I think it's a pretty cool thing. Now, one way to make this a little less OP, one way to maybe balance this, is to say the more copies of teammates you make, like if you're copying all 5 of your teammates at once, the lower their HP will be. So like the copies, if you create 5 copies, those copies would all have really, really low HP and be really easy to kill. Like they would be like one shot by almost anybody. Now, that might be a good way to counter, the OP nature of this. If you're just copying yourself and like one other teammate, you would have the AI clones, the decoys, would have a little bit higher HP, because you're just copying the two. So yeah, that might be a way to, make it a little less crazy. But I like how crazy this is. I like how insane this is. Because the ability for a character to say, okay, I have Soldier 76 with me, I have Lucio with me, and I have myself. Let's make copies of the three of us and have those, be like AI bots, that will will help us fight the enemy. I like that. I think that's just so crazy that it might work. You guys probably disagree. You probably think I'm a freaking lunatic. I don't know. So what about a sniper? You like snipers, kids? Well, here's a sniper for you. Fade, the Volatile Sniper. Fade's main fire is explosive rounds. So basically, like a long-range explosive. When it hits a surface or it hits a player, it just has a little bit of a blast. Causes a little bit of a radius of damage if there are other players near the player you hit, or if there's a player near the surface you hit. So if you miss, you still do a little bit of damage. This is sort of like a sniper for the people who are maybe a little more casual. They want to play sniper, but they're not, pinpoint headshot accurate all the time. You have a little bit of leeway. You have a little bit of chance to do damage by hitting a surface near a player. His alt fire, pressing right, just makes your rifle scoped. It brings up the scope for you, like with Widowmaker, with Anna, with Ash. It just brings up a scope for your existing rifle. So yeah. Fade's E ability, I think, is really cool. It's a blinding flare. Now, what this means is when he presses E, he shoots out a flare in whatever direction he's looking. If you look straight up and press E, you'll send a flare up into the sky that everybody can see. So your teammates will see where you send the flare up, enemies will see it, etc. This is a good way, like if you're trying to get your team together and they're not fucking listening, you just send a flare up and say, go to the flare, team. It's sort of a way to signal everybody on the map. If you fire it indoors, you're kind of screwed, though. The reason it says blinding flare is that if you hit an enemy with it, if you don't fire it straight up, but instead fire it at an enemy, if you hit an enemy with the flare, they will be sort of enshrouded in darkness for a moment, on their game view. Nothing will change for anybody else. They don't see them enshrouded in darkness or anything like that. It would just be that the player you hit has their game view turn a little bit dark. Now, I apologize for the source on this, but it sort of would be a bit like Minecraft. When you have blindness in Minecraft, it darkens everything around you except for what's right in front of your face. So yeah, that's kind of the best way I can sort of show you guys what I'm talking about. If an enemy gets hit with your flare, they're put into darkness as if they were blinded in Minecraft. Yeah. The shift ability for Fade, when he presses shift, would be to lie prone. This means that he lies down on the ground like a normal sniper would if they're trying to keep a low profile. You can get on a rooftop and lie flat. You can get in a corner or in a doorway and lie flat. This greatly reduces your profile for being hit. This greatly, reduces your hitbox. But unfortunately, if somebody does hit you, it's probably going to be a headshot because you're lying flat and all they can aim at is your head. But yeah, so this is a good way to, I think, hide, like I say, especially on rooftops, things like that, is you just press shift and you lie down on the rooftop and look over the edge. His ultimate, Fade's ultimate, again, is kind of a risky thing. Enemies become visible through walls, but only to Fade himself. This isn't like Widowmaker's ult. It doesn't let the entire team see, where the enemy is. Enemies become visible to Fade through his scope, if he uses his right click, to bring up his scope. And he can fire through walls at the people he sees through his scope. Now, the damage would be reduced by the number of walls the round passes through. So if an enemy is on the other side of one wall, and you see him with your ult and you fire through the wall at him, there would be reduced damage on your shot, on every shot you fire. If the enemy is behind like 3 or 4 walls and a truck, then you're firing through a lot of different things, so the damage would be greatly reduced. You'd barely be doing any damage to the guy you're shooting at through all that stuff. So yeah, he sort of is like a wall hacker, like Widowmaker, with the ability to shoot through objects at the people he sees, but it's not like Widowmaker's ult in that it's not showing enemy locations to anybody but Fade, and he has to have his scope up to see them. Because you don't want to have it where he can use his ability and then just look around normally and say, okay, the enemies are there, 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 and there. He has to have his scope up and he has to be looking, carefully to, try to get the shots off. But yeah, so that's Fade, the Volatile Sniper. Let me know what you think about him. I think he's pretty cool. I like the flare part the most. Meet Katrin, the Light Gladiator. Or is it Katrine? I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce the name of my own character. Main fire for Katrin is a piercing javelin. This would essentially be a light construct. She is one of those light characters that I like so much. She throws a piercing javelin that goes through enemies. Basically, if they line up for you, you could skewer a bunch of them. I should say that her javelin would be like a slow fire kind of thing. You pull back and you throw it. Sort of like when Hanzo, pulls back his bow and then releases. Her E ability would be to portal through specific surfaces. So there would be specific walls in the game marked as okay to go through with a portal that would let you create a portal that your team could go back and forth through. So this is like the ultimate choke breaker. Katrin is just crazy for chokes. She's like built essentially to destroy anyone holding a choke against her. Basically, like when Reaper selects areas to teleport, certain surfaces where he can look at them and teleport to them, it would be like that where you press E and you would be able to look around to try to find surfaces you can put a portal through. If you find a surface that works, you can put the portal through that by clicking. Now, what would happen is, if this were the type of thing that was added, the devs of Overwatch would have to go through each map and determine which walls are okay to put portals through, that type of thing. So that would be a lot of frickin' work, so I don't expect they'd ever do this, but, it's a fun idea, I think. It's a cool concept. The ability, essentially, to break chokes more easily than you can now. Her shift ability would be a damage-absorbing cloak. She would sort of bring up her cloak around her, kind of like Dracula, pulling that black cloak up around her face, protecting herself. And any damage done to her while she has the cloak up is absorbed by the cloak and goes to power the javelin. So you have like the basic javelin throw that does its basic damage, but any damage that Katrin absorbs by using her cloak ability, her shift ability, and raising her cloak, will power the javelin further. So like if she takes a whole mess of damage to that cloak, then that mess of damage is put on her next throw of the javelin. And I would think then it would sort of drop off from there. Like, you would have a really overpowered javelin you would throw once. The next time you throw it, maybe it would be like, 3/4 as powerful, and then it would be like half as powerful, and then it would go back, to its normal ability. So it's not like Zarya, where, if Zarya gets powered up, she's just like a constant damage dealer with that power. This would sort of be like, it sort of tapers off as you throw the javelin, consecutive times. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. Basically, she has a cloak that absorbs damage and makes her javelin more powerful if you hit it. Okay? Is that better for you? But yeah, her ultimate would be a prismatic laser that reflects off of surfaces. Now, the best way I can think of to show you this is to actually draw it out. So here we go. Alright, so let's assume that this is a picture of an Overwatch map from the top down. You've got some rooms, you've got like a truck, sort of like the rectangle in the middle there, you've got walls, and you've got like a choke point right here. where, you know, the enemy is like coming through to try to get in. And let's say that this blue dot right here is our character. This is Katrin, okay? What her ult would do is essentially fire a prismatic laser. So let's say she fires her prismatic laser this way, okay? It would reflect off of surfaces, meaning it would then reflect this way. It would just create almost like a laser grid, however long the line would be. Now, I don't know exactly how long her prismatic laser would be. So yeah, essentially it just is a laser that she can fire out ahead of her, and it'll go around corners, sort of like the old scatter shot. It'll just, you know, reflect off of surfaces, creating, you know, this grid pattern of laser that, you know, the enemy then has to try to maneuver as you move around and adjust, you know, what it's bouncing off of. So yeah, I don't know if that's confusing. That's probably too confusing. If you're still confused, ask me in the comments below. I'm sure we can work it out. This little fellow is named Tote. He's a loading Omnic. In other words, an Omnic built specifically to load crates on and off of ships and different things like that. Essentially a heavy lifter, built low to the ground, sort of maybe similar height as maybe Torbjorn. You know, a little guy who's made for a specific purpose. But he wants more out of life. He wants more out of life. He wants to be a hero. Nobody tell him that he's probably never going to be a hero. Tote's main fire would be spark bursts, like little, you know, little sparks, like almost like a shotgun type effect. Little spark cannons. His alt fire, his right click, would be a short range oil slick, so he can like fire a little stream of oil and create little, you know, pools of oil on the floor. Now, what do these two things have in common? What do you get when you combine them? That's right, you spread an oil slick across an area where you want it to be. Use your little spark gun to set it on fire. So yeah, you'd be able to create like little lines of flame, little pools of flame. You could, you know, basically draw a dick on the floor in oil and light it on fire. And of course the flames would cause damage to enemies. So you can damage enemies by hitting them with little spark bursts, like a weak shotgun. Or you can, you know, be more methodical about it, plan it out a little better, and lay down some oil slicks and then light them up, you know, when the enemies are coming through. But yeah, that's his main fire and his alt fire. His E ability would allow him to let a teammate onto his back so he can carry them around like he would carry a package, like he would carry a crate. Now this is inspired by a pretty similar or identical thing that a friend of mine by the name of Dead Palette suggested in a podcast we did looking at Overwatch characters in the past. So credit where credit is due. And I would say if you want to check out that video, I'll link it in the description below. But yeah, he can let a teammate onto his back and carry a teammate around. The teammate, basically, it would be like standing on Torbjorn's back and having Torbjorn walk you around as you know, fire and shoot at everybody and so on and so forth. So basically you can team up with somebody and carry them around. Now, why would they need to carry you? You know, why would they need you to carry them, I should say? When Tote pressed shift, you can hold it down, and the longer you hold it down, the more it charges a high jump, a far high jump. So essentially Tote, if he presses shift, he'll just do like a little bit of a high jump and a far jump. But if you hold it down longer, it charges it longer, and you can get pretty high and pretty far. He's got, you know, those powerful little tiny robot legs, sort of like a frog. And he can do a nice big jump if he charges the shift long enough. So basically you can carry somebody on your back, have them shooting at enemies and stuff, and you can charge the jump and, you know, leap you both to safety, or jump up to a better spot for your teammate to shoot down at people, different things like that. Basically you're offering additional mobility to the person you're carrying on your back. The ultimate for Tote is a pretty simple thing. Tote like a hatch on his back or something opens up, and he tosses like a cargo crate. He basically like throws out like little boxes. Now, wherever these boxes land, they create like a radius of like ongoing damage, like a slow, continuous damage radius. Now, this means that if you throw the crates into the enemy team, they're basically going to have to move because now they've got something in the middle of their group that's causing damage over time. If you throw it, like maybe you have like, I don't know, 4 or 5 crates you can throw, little crates with small radiuses of damage. You could sort of throw them in the pathway if the team is about to attack. The enemy team is about to attack, you throw it out, and they have to pass by several crates that have a radius of damage. They're like radioactive crates. They're dangerous. And instead of just fading away or dropping away, what happens is when it's time for the packages to be removed, they explode. So that's like a final, more powerful damage that it does to anybody standing near them. So essentially what you are able to do is throw out radioactive damaging things that explode when their time is up. And I think that there's a lot of potential for skinning with this character, like different skins that would be available. Like you could throw out like radioactive barrels, or you could throw out sea mines, like different things based on the skin you're using for Tote. But yeah, I don't know. I love this little guy, so I just I'm kind of biased. The passive for Tote is that he counts as a solid object. What does that mean? That means that Torbjorn can place a turret on him, like either on his back or on his, one of his sides, if he can angle it right, on his head, different things like that. If you can call that a head at the front. Symmetra can put sentries on him, on his body. Widowmaker can put a venom mine on him. Junkrat can throw a trap on him and stick a mine to any part of his body. Tote counts as a solid object for his own team's items, so if they want to place stuff on him. This doesn't mean that, if the enemy throws a mine, it's going to stick to him, but for his own team, they basically can load him up with stuff. So basically what you have with Tote is you have a sort of kind of ineffectual little guy on his own. He's just a little guy going around putting out oil and lighting it with sparks. It's not very, very mean, very deadly. He's not a big threat. But then he can, put somebody on his back. He can put a teammate on his back. He could have a Torbjorn turret on his head. And he could have Symmetra sentries stuck to his body. And suddenly little Tote is a roving ball of death. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential. Of course, if Tote, dies, if Tote is killed, any of the items, stuck on him probably would blow up too. I don't know. Kind of as like a little counterbalance to how powerful that could be. But yeah, I love Tote. I'm sorry. You guys, if you love Tote, put I love Tote in the comments. If you hate Tote, leave! What we have here is Midas, the Smiter, the Greek god in exoskeleton armor, probably a resident of Ilios maybe, I don't know. But Midas is an interesting character. He's our first actual flying hero. Now, I'll tell you what that means when we get to it. But Midas's main fire, like Zeus himself, is an infinite range continuous lightning bolt. Now, it does have to reload. It's not like continuous, like as in there's no ammo. But it just means that as you hold down mouse 1, the bolt will continue to exist. It sort of is like Winston's electrical cannon, except you're firing a single large bolt of lightning straight ahead of you. So it has infinite range, as I said, so until it hits an object, it'll just keep going. You just basically are generating from the palm of your hand a lightning bolt that stays up for as long as you hold mouse 1, as long as you have ammo on it. And yeah, this is a really good thing, I think, in terms of like a new type of weapon for the game, because there's nothing like it so far. There's no consistent infinite range damage weapon. So yeah, I think that could be really cool. The trade-off is, you're not firing projectiles, you're not shooting, you're just kind of holding down mouse 1 and, like, looking in a direction. So, you're kind of stuck in, trying to sweep your lightning bolt, sweep your beam across to try to follow, the targets as they're moving around you. But yeah, his alt fire is ball lightning, basically just a projectile version of lightning. He fires, throws in each hand, back and forth, left, right, throws balls of lightning. Yeah, not too much to say about that. It's for those situations where people are getting too close to you, and you need a little bit of a projectile. So you throw a couple, relatively slow-moving balls of electricity at the bad guys. His E ability is the ability to carry an ally through the air. Now, what this would do is it would allow an ally to take up like a tether that you would drop by pressing F, when they come up to it, and they would agree to be carried around by you through the air. So you could dangle the tether down in front of Bastion. He could accept it, and you could carry him around in turret form through the air. Pretty OP. The thing is, though, Shift toggles flight for Midas. Now, this means that Shift turns flight on and off. When you have it on, you fly. When you have it off, you don't. He can't get to the same heights as Farah. He's not like, constantly boosting up and up and up and up. Instead, it would be like a controlled hover of a certain amount of feet off the ground. So what you would want to do is you'd want to get like to a roof, you'd want to like go up a staircase, you'd want to go up to a high location, and you would want to press shift from there so that you're, that would be how you would get high, on the map. That's how you would get high up in the air. So yeah, he doesn't, boost up. He just basically, you toggle the flying ability. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense. You go up to a roof, you press shift, and when you step off the roof, you'll fly. You don't boost up like Farah and go, higher and higher into the air. So yeah, I think it's really cool, the idea to offer a tether to carry around, a teammate. Toggling flight on and off, I think, is a kind of powerful thing. But if you keep it at a certain level, if you keep it at the level he was able to climb, able to walk up, and he can't rise or lower, I think that is a good trade-off, because people are going to know consistently what level you're at in the air, and they're going to be able to adjust accordingly, where they fire to shoot at you. But yeah, so less mobility in return for consistent flying. The ultimate for Midas is that he sort of glows gold. He becomes a big gold, radiant, beautiful man. And any enemies that look at him, that even have him on their screen, in their vision, begin to slow down and turn to stone. like as if they're looking at Medusa, at a Gorgon. This would functionally be sort of similar to May when she freezes people. But it would be a freeze that happens to any enemies who are looking at you, who have you in their vision. So the obvious way for them to deal with this is to look away from you, but that means they can't shoot at you. That means they can't attack you. So yeah, I think this is kind of a very interesting and very strange character, and as I said, I like risky ideas, I like new ideas, I like strange stuff. I want to see some new things in the game that change the way things go, and I think this is a really good one that would really change a lot of shit. Offering the tether to Lucio and carrying Lucio through the air as he, heals you with his radius healing, and you fire an infinite range lightning bolt through a window, and, it just keeps going until it hits a wall far across the map. And you try to angle it, trying to touch it to people, basically, to do damage to them. I just think it's kind of an interesting idea, and I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. But yeah. That's Midas. I mean, there's not much more else to say about him. He's sort of just Greek Iron Man. Now, you may have noticed that we haven't discussed a tank yet. We've had snipers, we've had healers, we've had DPS, we've had a lot of different things. But we haven't discussed a tank, and this is the first tank on our list. This is Yoanna. That's right, Yoanna. She is a tank character. She's a very strange-looking young lady. Her whole thing is basically size control, which I think, is actually going to be kind of doable based on how I've set it up here. It may sound crazy, but I think it's going to work. Her main fire are left and right blades. Basically, she's holding big, big old machete type blades that she just kind of slices through people with. Very much a melee fighter. Pressing E, her E ability, causes her to shrink. Now, when she shrinks, she gains move and attack speed, and her main fire becomes a dash attack. So instead of swinging the blades, at people, now she gets, a little dash attack. So she basically shrinks to the size of maybe like Torbjorn, but, keeping her same model, her same proportions, and she basically speeds around the map as a small little weird person. Her shift ability, the opposite of her E ability, her shift ability grows her to the size of a tank. Again, keeping her same proportions. Kind of makes her just a larger person in general. She grows to the size of a tank. She gains more HP and damage, of course. She can do more damage to people this way. But her main fire, her mouse 1 ability, is basically crossing her blades, crossing her big old machetes, and creating a shield. So when she crosses them together, it sort of generates, from each blade, it generates a different side of the shield. Now what this means is that people can destroy each side of the shield separately. So they can destroy the left side of the shield, and you'd still have the right side up, and then they can, work on the right side. So this is sort of like, if you picture Reinhardt's shield, maybe more of like a cow catcher shape, like more of a point at the front with each side, going back a little bit. It sort of is like if you picture that shield going down on one side, and the other side is still protecting, the people who are behind that side. And of course, each half of the shield would have half of the shield's HP, so you could very easily all concentrate one side of it and destroy one side of the shield. But yeah, when she releases the shield, like as I said, mouse 1 puts the shield up. When she releases that, it does like a knockback effect. So if there are any enemies standing in front of the shield, she releases the shield, causes a bit of damage, and knocks them back with the 2 blades. Sort of like having the blades crossed to make the shield, and then releasing is like a slash outward with the 2 blades. So yeah, her ult is basically a high gravity field. What this is basically she just, has these big old boots. She just kind of stomps her feet a bit and generates a field of high gravity, meaning that enemies are now essentially tied to the ground. They can't jump. They can't, boost themselves up. They can't mine jump. They can't do anything to get off the ground. And they move a bit slower. So it's like a high gravity field around Yoanna. So yeah, it kind of like locks everybody down. It grounds them. Yeah, I think she's a pretty cool character. Now what you could do with her is, on defense, you grow really big. You hold the spot. If things start going wrong, you use E to become tiny, and you zip away. You get out of the situation. On attack, what you might want to do with her is start out by pressing E. You shrink. You come out of the spawn. You try to hide behind things. You try to get to where you need to be. And then you grow big and you go ham on people. That type of thing. So she sort of is like a tank with a lot of different choices for mobility and different choices for how you want to specifically hold a certain area. Now, if you aren't in shrink mode and if you aren't in grow mode, then you're just a normal-sized person, just doing your normal left and right hack slash blades. You're more of like a melee DPS. So she's kind of like a combination of a lot of different things here. And I think that it would be really cool. I know I say that about all my heroes, but if I didn't think they were cool, they wouldn't be in the video. Now we're getting a little creepy. We're getting a little weird, getting a little out there, getting a little spooky. This is Botch. Botch is a failed experiment. Botch is basically not just a reference to botulism, but Botch is basically a result of what happens when Talon, or whoever the hell you want to place the blame on, tries to recreate someone like Reaper, tries to recreate a genetic super soldier with some unearthly powers. Botch is a failed experiment. Botch is just... he's not in good shape. Botch's main fire is lobbed blobs. He's a blob-lobber who lobs blobs at people. Now, the blobs he lobs are lobbed blobs. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop doing that. Basically, you're lobbing a projectile, sort of like Junkrat's grenades, but what you're doing is you're lobbing a gelatinous little blob of goo, green goo, and when it lands, it sort of sticks to the ground like a little gelatin thing, and if it's touched, it bursts in like acid. So yeah, it sort of is like a delayed explosive, sort of. Junkrat, what happens is, he fires the things, fires the grenades, they bounce around, they land, and if somebody touches them or if they hit somebody, they explode. With these blobs, what you do is you just lob them. They don't bounce. You just lob them over things. You lob them into rooms. You lob them wherever you want. They sit there like a gelatinous little, wiggly little dude. And after a moment, they burst in like an acid mist, causing like damage. So yeah, it sort of is basically like a more viscous and sticky Junkrat grenade. If you want to, I don't know if that makes any sense. His E ability causes an enemy to take or give damage from healing. So what he does is he basically infects an enemy player with some kind of horrible, horrible problem. If you use your E ability on an enemy, it means that that enemy will take damage instead of being healed. So let's say the enemy Yoanna, shoots the person that you've used E on. That enemy Yoanna will damage their teammate instead of healing them. You see what I'm saying? You cause the enemy to take damage from healing. Now, if you use E on an enemy healer, let's say you use E on that enemy Yoanna, then Yoanna will do damage to anybody that she shoots because she's been sort of, her healing has been sort of reversed. Now, as I've, said in the past on other things, this isn't like a lasting effect. It would be like for a few seconds. Something you can get away with that might be a little bit OP and crazy because you say, it's not forever, it's just for a little bit. But yeah, so I like that idea of basically sabotaging the enemy team and making it so that heals actually damage their teammates. So yeah, Botch's shift ability is to trade places with an enemy. Again, he sort of is like a failed attempt at recreating like a Reaper type character. This is as close as I get to like fan insert characters. I'm mentioning other characters here. I'm mentioning Reaper. Like, he's best friends with Reaper. He and Reaper hang out all the time. It just feels weird. It feels weird to go, insert my character into canon like that. But, that's basically his kit is sort of similar to certain things, so I kind of have to bring that in. Instead of Reaper's ability to teleport wherever he wants, Botch's shift ability would allow him to select an enemy player and basically trade places with them. What this means is you could, if you can catch a tracer with your shift ability, because you have to be, you have to have it on them. You have to have, the thing specifically on the enemy you want to trade with. If you can catch an enemy tracer or something like that, you can teleport them to where you're standing, and you teleport to where they're standing. So you could like bring them into the middle of your team to be killed. Or you can teleport out of danger's way by swapping with an enemy, somewhere else on the map. I just think it's kind of a cool idea. You would have to be standing on solid ground to do this. You can't do it in midair, because the last thing you want is people like trying to jump off the map and then trade with somebody right before they fall, because that would be really cheap. I just think it's a cool idea. There's a lot of different applications and a lot of different strange things you could do. It opens up a new bunch of ideas you can have about how to play the game if you can trade places with an enemy. Botch's ultimate gives enemies a damage radius that hurts teammates over time. Now what this means is when you use your ultimate on the enemy Reinhardt, that Reinhardt is now radioactive. He's now toxic to his own teammates. meaning if they stand too close to him, they take damage. So yeah, it sort of is good at breaking up a team that is grouped together. If the enemy team is grouped, like they're all behind a shield, or they're all surrounding the bastion, you can hit one of them with your ultimate, and that enemy player will now damage his own teammates if they're standing too close to him, like within the radius. So yeah, it's good. It's really good for breaking up an enemy team. Now, what I would like to see with this is his ultimate having a certain time period in which he can move it around to different enemies if he wants. So, like, let's say he uses his ultimate on the bastion, the enemy bastion, and the enemy bastion is killed. He could then, turn and use it on the Reinhardt, just so that he doesn't, immediately lose his ultimate because the one person he used it on, got killed right away. But yeah, so his passive ability is that he releases some blobs on death. Again, this is sort of like a Junkrat kind of thing, but a bit different because of how the blobs function. As I said, they kind of sit there just kind of minding their own business and quivering quietly to themselves until the moment that they burst and release their toxic, gross, disgusting acid bile shit. So yeah, Botch is a pretty pleasant guy. A nice idea for a good, clean game of Overwatch. Alright, we're getting to the end here. You've made it through this hour or more video of my random, stupid, insane ideas, and congratulations. This is Router. Router is yet another user of light technology, because I like that a lot. I like that concept a lot. Router is a bit of a dickhole. He's a bit of an asshole. He sort of is almost like an off-tank. I'm not quite sure if he would literally be an off-tank, but he sort of is like an off-tank. His main fire is giant melee fists. So in other words, just big old fists hovering about a foot or two in front of him that he uses to just pummel people back and forth. Just punch, 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 like, box people to death. His alt fire is a slap, a backhanded bitch slap, that turns enemies 180 degrees. So if the enemy Reinhardt is charging at you, you can right-click him, slap him, turn him around, he'll go charging the other way. If somebody is running up to you firing their weapon, you can alt fire them, you can slap them, and turn them around, and they'll be running away from you. Similarly, if you come up behind someone, if you're flanking them, you can slap them and turn them toward you, so like turn them away from your team. Let's say the enemy Roadhog is using his ult, and he's just, socking your team. You can use the right click, slap him, and turn him away. So I think that's kind of a cool idea. The E ability on Router tethers enemies to surfaces. Basically what you do is you fire, with the E ability, you fire a tether through your enemy, and it tethers them to the surface behind them. Basically restricting their movement, and even maybe drawing them backward a little bit to the surface. It's not as definite a thing as like Maze freezing. It doesn't completely stop them in their tracks. They can still shoot, they can still do things, but they are restricted in movement because now they're tethered to something. They're basically chained down. The shift ability on Router is the ability to create a jump pad for your allies to use. Now, how would this work? Similar to how Symmetra can create like a teleporter, and then, teammates can go up to the teleporter and go through it to a new location. Basically, what would happen is Router would create a jump pad that would be there for a limited amount of time, and it would boost teammates who walk on it just like a normal jump pad, like the one on Oasis, where you step on it and it bounces you high up into the air. This would be good for getting your team to higher locations, getting your team basically out of trouble or into an attack area. Let's say you're at a choke where you want your team up on the bridge above the choke instead of going underneath it and getting shot. You just could create a jump pad and have your entire team bounce up onto the bridge over the choke and have high ground. Different stuff like that. It just would be fun to be able to create jump pads, is all I'm saying. The ultimate for Router is that he can grab and throw enemies while also generating a forward-facing personal shield for himself. So a shield sort of pops out in front of him, about the size of himself, sort of like Brigida's shield, not, protecting a bunch of people, just protecting himself. And the fists, the two big hands, he's able to grab an enemy and throw them. Grab an enemy and throw them. Basically, you would click and grab an enemy, and you would hold that enemy in the hand for like maybe 1 or 2 seconds, or 1.5 seconds maybe. And if you click again, you throw the player. And just like Tote's ability to carry somebody on his back, I have to give credit where credit is due and say that this was inspired by that same podcast that I did with Dead Palette, where he had a character who sort of would lunge forward and grab an enemy and then throw them. Good enough to steal. Good enough idea to steal it. So this would be really good for cheap tactics like running up to the enemy, popping your ult, grabbing an enemy, turning and facing off the map and throwing them toward, the drop. Turning back, grabbing another enemy, turning and throwing them off the map. Now, if you turn away, people are going to be shooting you in the back, because remember, the personal shield is just on your front. But, it just could be like a fun thing. If you remember back in the beginning of Overwatch, Bastion used to have his own personal shield in front of him when he went into turret mode. It would sort of be like that, just a little shield hovering in front of him. But yeah, his passive is that as he does damage to enemies, the fists grow in size. So while he starts out with maybe like some large but not really too large fists, like maybe like Hulk hands, those plastic Hulk hands that kids wear these days. Is that the trend these days? Hulk hands? No. Start off with like maybe Hulk hand sized, hard, light generation hands. And as you do damage to people with your melee, with your mouse 1, your main fire, the hands kind of grow in size. Become bigger and bigger. Of course, there would be a cap. They wouldn't get, tremendous, but, And, of course, with bigger fists, that means there's more range to your melee attacks. So if you do enough damage, you get some nice big old dumpster fists, and you just get to wail on people, from a further distance. So yeah, maybe they would even do more damage. I don't know. But yeah, that's Router. Last but certainly not least, we have the single greatest character to ever be suggested for Overwatch. In fact, for any game ever. This is possibly the best OC ever created. Here we have Mr. Biz. Mr. Biz has no main fire. He has no alt fire. He has no E ability. He has no shift ability. And he has no ultimate. Instead, what he has is a series of 4 passives. Passive number 1, Mr. Biz is always screaming. He's a businessman. He doesn't belong in the game. He doesn't belong in the middle of a battle. He doesn't know what Overwatch is. He doesn't know what Talon is. He doesn't care. He just is trying to get to work when everything starts going down. So he's always screaming. His second passive is that he moves faster the more he's shot. So, more damage you do to him, even if it's melee, even if it's from explosives, whatever, the more damage he takes, the faster he moves, until he's like a blinding blur of screams and terror running around the map in circles. Passive number 3, whenever Mr. Biz crouches, he holds his briefcase over his head and becomes immune to any damage. Sort of like just a protective fetal position mode. And he can either move or delay payloads. He can cap or delay the cap of a point while doing this. He is immortal and impervious to all damage when crouching. Passive number 4 is that Mr. Biz randomly drops tripping hazards. Things fall out of his briefcase, and they, trip up the enemy. So Soldier 76 may go running by, and he'll slip on a notepad and go flying and fall into a wall, and instantly be killed. But yeah, so that's Mr. Biz. I think Mr. Biz is the greatest character. He has a pipe, as you can see in the image. Every time you leave spawn, he will start screaming, and the pipe will fly out of his mouth. And the pipes will stay on the maps permanently. Now, this is across rounds, meaning that eventually every map will fill with millions of pipes. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. Also, it's not listed here, but also one of his passives is that he can't be killed by falling off the map. Environmental kills don't work on him. Instead, what will happen is he'll lay at the bottom of the drop and just continue screaming as he lays there motionless. So yeah, that's Mr. Biz. That's our bonus character for this video. I think that he belongs in Overwatch. He should be in the next patch. I don't care. Don't even put him through PTR. Just put him directly in the game overnight. Tell no one. And yeah, Mr. Biz. There we go. So there you have it, everybody. 12 fan characters created by me of things I'd like to see in Overwatch. I basically just want them to do some risky and crazy stuff and let the players sort it out and deal with it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you like certain characters. Let me know what your favorite character is, if you have one. Let me know what your least favorite character is if you have one. I'm sure you have one of those. You probably have 12 of those. But yeah, this video has actually been something I've been working on across like a couple months. Basically just changing things here and there, doing little tweaks, little changes, little, stuff, basically thinking of how each ability would work and what it would do, on and off, just for a long time. So it kind of is almost sad in the way that this video is over. But yeah, I'm sure that everybody else watching it is quite happy. My name is Tormental. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like incredibly stupid things made by a moron, and I will see you whenever I make something else. Goodbye, everybody.